So going to free public health, Medicare for all, is a massive deflationary event that obviously doesn't require a tax increase. If anything, it would require a tax decrease. But I think I'd argue right now we have more public services that need to be filled than. But that would be a political choice. You can either cut taxes or expand public services.
So, if you were in charge of if you had some authority over making some policy decisions in the current environment, where would you start to start making things better?
Do I have a secret Swiss bank account or not?
Oh, you mean to funnel yourself some money? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No? Okay.
No secret Swiss bank account. Yeah.
All right. Because I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a politician.
Okay, so, I follow. Yeah.
So I'm in charge. So there's a couple of things I would do, because I think price stability, if I wanted to win re-election, price stability is a must, because people don't like inflation. They'd rather have high unemployment than inflation. They just think it's the government robbing them. They've got all these misconceptions, and I'm not going to be able to change that perception. So it's just as easy for me to promote stable prices as not. So I'm going to promote stable prices. So first thing I would do is go to Medicare for all, and I'd make it free. And that would be price stabilizing, because suddenly businesses are no longer have healthcare costs, and they're competitive and they're trying for market share to the extent that they are, which is quite a bit, not entirely, but quite a bit. Their costs are lower, so prices are going to be lower. The same way tariffs increase their price because it increased their costs. Getting rid of healthcare as a marginal cost of production lowers their costs. Okay, it also causes like 5 million people to lose their jobs because they're doing jobs like marketing, sales and marketing in private insurance companies that don't have to be there under Medicare for all. Medicare's real cost to operate is something like 8%. Private companies, it's more like 25%. We get rid of all the redundant accounting and all these things. And so suddenly 5 million people are added to the unemployment line who used to work in private health insurance. And even though they'll be picking up Medicare roles, these companies and these people, it's not enough. Okay, and that savings is something like $500 billion a year that these people aren't being paid. But what it does is it allows us, number one, it's a deflationary bias. You got 5 million people looking for work, and skilled people, smart people who weren't there before. And so that's a deflationary bias. So that's a good thing for price stability. And it's also a good thing for all our grand plans for the Green New Deal and new infrastructure and whatnot, because now we got 5 million people looking for jobs, as opposed to us trying to extract 5 million people from people who are already working and trying to pay more and compete for it. All of a sudden, we've got 5 million people out of work who probably be more than willing to pay at their current salaries in our economy. So it's a deflationary bias to go to Medicare for all right away. The one part that isn't so deflationary is people will have, it's free, so people will have more money. Businesses will have more money. To the extent that they go out and spend it, they could cause prices to increase. They could put demand pressures on prices. We haven't had a lot of those. Even today, the pressures are almost entirely from the supply side. We haven't run out of anything, and we don't have real capacity constraints apart from supply side issues like not enough chips to make the cars, but nothing that won't reverse when the chips are available, and we'll be right back to being able to supply demand. But should some day that excess demand create a problem, then we can look at what to do about it. And of course, in our current tax structure, a lot of that's going to get taxed away over time. So it's there. It's not this year. It's like if you're driving a car down the road and you might have to turn left in 5 miles. You don't turn left now to get it out of the way. You're going to crash. You have to wait. Fiscal policy is like that. You have to wait until you get to your exit, then you turn. So you have to wait until this excess demand actually comes to fruition before you have to do anything about it. And for the near term, it's not going to be there. So going to free public health, Medicare for all, is a massive deflationary event that obviously doesn't require a tax increase. If anything, it would require a tax decrease. But I think I'd argue right now we have more public services that need to be filled than. But that would be a political choice. You can either cut taxes or expand public services. So that's number one. I'd do that immediately. And the second thing I would do would open up a transition job to anybody willing and able to work, the job guarantee. Right now, we've got fairly high unemployment, even though the numbers are down. We have a lot of people who were working that aren't working now. And it's very difficult to transition from unemployment, whether you're officially registered or not, into the private sector, because private sector employers prefer to hire people already working. And there are lots of studies that have shown that over the years. And it makes intuitive sense also. I mean, I've been an employer. Somebody who hasn't been working, you worry about whether they might be on drugs.
Yeah, why aren't you working? Yeah.
What's that?
It's as the employer going, well, what happened? Why aren't you working? Something's up here. There's something you're not telling me. Yeah.
Yeah, do you get into fights easily? But if somebody's working and they have a supervisor and you can just check them out, they come in on time every day and they're not a problem. Business is willing to hire them, train them, do that type of thing. It's very risky to hire somebody who's been unemployed, especially for a longer period of time, and business is risk averse in that matter. They'd rather hire somebody already working, they know something about them. And so you get this, what's called hysteresis, where each cycle where unemployment goes up, it becomes more and more difficult to hire those people back. And even though the unemployment numbers are relatively low, the U6 number is not that low. It's probably 8 or 9% right now. I didn't check it last week or whatever it came out. And so to help these people transition out of the public sector, because when you're not working, you're unemployed, you're in the public sector, and I can explain that later, but you're certainly not in the private sector. To get them back into private sector employment, you offer a transition job, which allows them to demonstrate that they go to work, they come in on time, they can get along, they're clean, and that's all it takes. It doesn't take a lot of training or anything else. It just
showing up
takes a real desire to work and show that you're serious, and you'll get hired. And history has proven this over and over. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But this is what I'm proposing now. And it also dramatically enhances price stability, because it stabilizes labor markets. As long as you have these 5 or 10 million people, whatever number it is, are now really ready and able to work because they are working. That's a source of labor for businesses, for new businesses, for startups, for people who need things done that isn't there right now. And so it totally stabilizes.
Well, and then I've heard you talk about this before. It's also a source of private sector net savings, right? If a certain area is short on private sector net savings, if they have the federal transition job, that's just money being generated from the government that goes immediately into the nearby private sector. Now they've got the money to afford to hire the people out of the public.
It
public
increases.
Space,
It increases public spending by the salary, which is a positive effect. However, once they get hired, then that spending goes down, and so it's what you call countercyclical.
Yeah.
When the number of people in that transition job is high, you're getting more public sector spending to create demand so that they can get hired, whether it's in restaurants or IT or public health or something. And then once that number shrinks, the government automatically cuts that back on government spending. So the support is only there when it's needed. So it works. It's a constructive way to do it. Yeah.
Did you have any?
Okay, so those are the two things I would do right away
okay.
that I feel are strong biases. And what we see is right now we're using unemployment for price stability. When the unemployment rate gets too low, everybody gets scared and they start looking at ways to slow things down because we're going to get inflation. Instead, we're using employment through guaranteed transition job for price stability. It's a much better price anchor. And so it enhances price stability. So for after price stability now, during this inflation scare, we want a transition job for anybody willing and able to work. And the transition job wage, whatever it is, $15 an hour, will stabilize everything around that. The government has put a tax on, which creates a need for the funds. It's at the margin telling us what we have to do to get it. You have to work in this transition job at $15 an hour. That becomes the price anchor that stabilizes things at that wage. And it sort of stays there until the government changes that wage, which it may or may not decide to do for political purpose down the road. But it is a price anchor, the stabilizing wage. And also we have public health care, which is a very good thing. And no economist thinks health care should be a marginal cost of production. It makes no sense to have our pricing structure based on healthcare costs. unless you're working in a coal mine where working makes you sicker, therefore that company should pay for healthcare. It's completely the opposite. So our whole price structure is distorted by not having single payer public health. And so those are the first two things I would do to stabilize prices. I'd also eliminate the tariffs. They serve no public purpose whatsoever under close examination. They're entirely counterproductive. I would only have protectionism, and I wouldn't use tariffs for strategic goods and services that we need in case of an emergency. We want to make sure they're available.
Steel, oil, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, right. And there are better ways to do that than tariffs, things like that. So I'd eliminate the tariffs, and I'd have other policies for what's needed strategically.
Yeah, it would seem to me that strategically import quotas would be much more effective than tariffs because they actually address the root issue. And tariffs are just a price change, and then we hope that it has the desired effect.
Well, what I would do, I'd go one step further. I'd say, let's say for the defense industry, they need to contract their steel. Their suppliers have to contract their steel domestically because we need it for defense strategically. But for washing machines, I don't care where that's contracted. I mean, if we get in a war, we can't. There's a shortage of washing machines. It's okay, but we don't want a shortage of steel for the weaponry. So for food, I would have strategic stockpiles like we have the strategic petroleum reserve, which I would not be using now the way they're doing it to lend out oil for the price stability. That's not what. There's no shortage of oil right now. The inventories are where they want them to be. We can buy all the oil we want at the going price from the marketplace. Saudis set price and let quantity adjust. They will sell you all you want at their posted prices. So it's not about a supply issue. We shouldn't be using it for a price issue. So, and you can go through, maybe we should have vaccines manufactured domestically to make sure we have them or something like that. And so on. But I don't see quotas usually as a strategically, not that it wouldn't work, but it's a roundabout way. Let's just do it directly. Let's just source what we need strategically, domestically, and let's have stockpiles for what we consider emergencies.
If everybody who's watching this now or recording could like, share, and subscribe it helps us out a lot.
Yeah.
I hate saying it, but it's just true.